To be with you. Word of the day, Monday, the day after Sunday. Yesterday, we had the opportunity to kind of walk through this idea of knowing God, Yada Gnosko, this deep, intimate relationship with God by knowing His character that ultimately leads to worship, that leads to a life that is transformed to justice and righteousness. A heart of worship is fueled by knowing God. That's why the most preeminent question, who is God, is the one that leads to, when we seek an answer to that, when we look to know God, to be intimate with God, it transforms us as we worship Him and we bring righteousness and justice into the world. So that's where we've taken this idea of the heart of worship, and we looked at David, who was having, did you see that kind of a moment when he fought Goliath from Gath, as probably outlined in Psalm chapter 8. And that story is outlined for us in 1 Samuel chapter 17. But he says something very interesting. I want to talk about a characteristic of God, knowing that characteristic of God. He says this in verse 26 of 1 Samuel 17. He says, David spoke to the men who were standing with him. Remember, David has seen them asking the wrong questions and therefore derailed, and in fear as they're looking at the giant Goliath, they've completely derailed their sense of worship of the living God. And you can almost hear in the pleading of David, I want you to trust. I want you to seek who is God. Asking the right question has power. So David spoke to the men who were standing with him. What will be done for the man who kills that Philistine and removes the disgrace from Israel? He's reminding them, God's going to take care of it. The king is going to take care of you. Just who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the, this is the characteristic of God I want to talk to you for a few moments this evening, who would defy the armies, not just any army, but the armies that belong to the living God. This idea that our God is a living God. This idea that all other gods are dead. This is a characteristic, a trait of God. And I've been reading this Who is God, or Who God Is, Meditations on the Character of God by Ben Witherington. And I want you to just hear this. He talks about this. He says, see, for example, Jeremiah 10:10, where the biblical God is called both the living God and the eternal or everlasting God. In Daniel 6:26, saying the living God is enduring forever, right? And see further Acts 14:15. It is not surprising that the Gospels, Jesus is called the Son of the living God. As we shall see shortly, it is Jesus Christ who is said to be the life, which in this case does not merely mean he is alive or even just the source of ordinary physical existence. Sorry. So I want to talk to you for a moment about that. The living God, the God whose very word, because he's a living God, is alive and powerful, sharper than any two-edged sword. It pierces to the dividing the son of the soul and the spirit. He's a living God. He's not a dead God. And he raises dry, bleached bones to life. He raises them to life. He calls out to Lazarus and he says, come to life. I came to give you life and to give it to you more abundantly, in total abundance. And so this idea that a living God brings his subjects to life is what I want to talk to you just for a couple of minutes. So we're in John chapter 11, verse 25. Jesus is talking to Martha and he says this very thing to her. He says, I am, he says, Martha, he says, listen, they're talking about Lazarus, and Jesus says to Martha, your brother will rise again. And Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again on the last day. But Jesus says, I'm not talking about the last day. We serve the character of our God. Those who know their God will do mighty and energetic exploits. Our God is an alive God. He's a living God. He brings life to dry, bleached bones. He restores their humanity. He gives them a new life in Jesus Christ. Jesus said, I'm not talking about the sweet by and by. He says, I am that I am. He uses this phrase that would remind him, I'm the living God. I am that I am, the resurrection and the life. I'm the only one that life can be found in. I'm the living God. And that we serve the living God. We can know the living God. Everything else is dead. Our idols are dead. Our way of thinking is dead. All of it does nothing but produce death. Sin and the handmaiden of sin is death. And so Jesus says, man, I am that I am. I'm the God. I'm the covenant-keeping Hesed, loving kindness. I am the God who keeps my promises. I am that I am, the resurrection and the life. I'm the living God. I am the living God. The one who believes in me, even if he dies, will live Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? And so Jesus is challenging us. He's saying, I want you to know God. I want you to know the living God. Jesus Christ says, I am that I am the living God. My friends, we can know Yada, we can gignosko, we can know the living God by trusting and believing that he is alive, his word is alive and powerful, and he gives us great life and hope and new life in Jesus Christ. Lightbridge Church, I love you, thankful for you, looking forward to our MCs later tonight, and being with you the rest of the week. Have a great night. Thank you.